The following program is being brought to you on the Voice America Health and Wellness Channel. For more information about our network and to check our additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericahealth.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the following program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect the views and ideas held by the Voice America Talk Radio Network, its staff, and management.
Welcome to Falling Through the Cracks. Feel alive and thrive with Dr. Rebecca Risk. Do you ever feel that even though nothing seems seriously wrong and you pass all the medical tests, that you still feel that your health, pain, and fatigue are completely out of control? It doesn't have to be that way. Listen to the tips and suggestions given on our program today and take back control of your health. Now, here is Dr. Rebecca Risk.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to Falling Through the Cracks. Today, we're speaking with Dr. Mona Morstein, who is a naturopathic physician with a medical practice focusing in integrative diabetes treatment. We're discussing her new book, Master Your Diabetes, an integrative comprehensive approach for both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So, Mona, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rebecca. Just to clarify, it's a comprehensive, integrative approach for both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Thank you for mentioning that.
Yeah, so welcome. You know, when I booked this show, I didn't realize the irony of what it would be, but it is Canadian Thanksgiving today, and everybody's at home, of course, feeding themselves with sugar and pie and all those delicious things, and we're going to bring their awareness to what they're doing to themselves, I guess.
Well, hopefully they're having lots of turkey, too.
Yeah, just to balance that out a bit. So what inspired you to write this book?
Well, you know, Rebecca, I've been in practice about 29 years or so, and I've been seriously involved in diabetes for about 25 of those. And I started out being mentored by Dr. Richard Bernstein, who wrote the book, Dr. Bernstein's Diabetes Solution. And, of course, that got all of us introduced to the low-carb diet for diabetes and also how to specifically dose insulin for those patients who need it, really in the most accurate and effective way. But as I went throughout my own practice, being a naturopathic physician, I realized I was covering a lot of territory that other people really hadn't covered. And while I certainly knew low carb and insulin, there were so many other things to consider, such as integrative lab work and environmental detoxification and using supplements and integrative care to reverse, diabetic complications. And given my expertise and experience, I really felt that it was really time to write my book, which wound up being, 500 pages, and I think is the most comprehensive book on diabetes, which discusses conventional, but everything really to do with integrative care of a diabetic, and I think it's applicable also to pre-diabetic patients.
Well, I do agree with you. A lot of books, when they're talking about diabetes, they talk about, diet, which is important, but you go into way more detail than that, which I think is helpful for people where that hasn't worked or they've, something's not working right for them and they have to take it a step further.
Yeah, and also I think, unfortunately, a lot of type 1 patients kind of get put to the side because few people who write about diabetes are comfortable with insulin and dosing kids and with the type 1 patients and some of the things that are particular to them. So putting type 1 in the title was very important because I think some of these patients think it's all about, diabetic books are all just about losing weight, which of course the majority of our diabetic patients are generally overweight type 2s, but type 1s need their own care for not just insulin, but how do they protect themselves from diabetic complications, and what supplements should they be taking, and how do they work, with stress and environmental disease to make their health better. So I really wanted to cover both of the major types of diabetes.
I definitely agree with you there. When we talk about diabetes, I think most people go to type 2, which I guess I'll have you explain in a moment. But it's type 1 is there and was there first, and they are different. And maybe I'll just get you to explain how they're different,
Sure.
so people can understand why that's important. That you have to talk about both, because the treatment is obviously different for both of them.
Well, a bit, yes. But, type 2 diabetes, which is 90 to 95% of people with diabetes, is based on the condition called insulin resistance, which is where, in general, at least early on, these patients do produce insulin, but the cells that respond to insulin and are the signal to take glucose in from the blood and put it into body cells, they no longer respond to the insulin signals and do not take the glucose in. That's called insulin resistance, and it's due to many factors. Over time, if the blood sugars are high enough in type 2s, they can actually cause enough damage to their pancreas that it no longer produces insulin, and they will need to go on insulin themselves. But type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease whereby the body, for some reason, the body has a gene, so it's got to start with that, but then for some reason that gene turns on, and as a result, given some stimuli, some triggers, the body starts attacking the pancreas and destroys enough of it that its beta cells, it cannot produce insulin now. And so with insulin being required to take glucose out of the cells and take it out of the blood and put it in the cells, these people do need to generally be on insulin. Some type 1s, if they're on a restrictive diet at first, may have a very long honeymoon period where their kind of pancreas kicks in again. But generally by puberty, because of other factors, they're pretty much all of them need to be placed on insulin at that time.
Okay, so I guess the next question is, what are the risk factors for diabetes? And obviously for type 1, we know it's genetic and that happens. But what about type 2 diabetes? Are there certain risk factors that we can look out for that?
Yeah, sure. You know what? Let me just add on that there is when we think type 1, we mainly think pediatric kids, but there is a type 1 that can also happen to adults as well, which we call latent autoimmune diabetes of the adult, or LADA. I just wanted to clarify that. But as for the risk factors for diabetes, and let's say if we're talking about type 2 diabetes, there are a number of risk factors. And some of the most obvious ones are abdominal obesity, or at least abdominal overweight, which is having fat cells in what we call the visceral fat there in the tummy, the beer belly type, the apple type of body type. And fat in that area definitely causes the development of insulin resistance. We have associations with diet, such as overeating, eating too many refined carbohydrates, white sugars, eating badly so that the diet lacks certain nutrients that help the body not become insulin resistant, such as a lack of omega-3, a lack of zinc, a lack of chromium, just lacks of nutrients in the diet because we're eating too much, junk food or fast food or processed foods that are lacking in these nutrients. obviously a lack of exercise, so that the excess food calories will turn into that abdominal fat. We also have environmental chemicals, and this is a huge thing that is not talked about enough. Even the World Health Association says that arsenic causes insulin resistance. And there are clear studies showing that persistent organic pollutants are considered endocrine disruptors, and that they absolutely cause insulin resistance at our cells. And if this is a huge problem, given the amount of pesticides and herbicides that are sprayed, all over the world, including America, Canada, so forth. So there's also, sometimes we have hormones out of balance in our bodies. There's just a number of different factors that can all come together. Sleep apnea, which tends to go with the stomach, but that can raise the blood sugar, that can raise the appetite. We might be getting into some indirect causes, but some of the ones I mentioned are the major causes.
So, do we know, and we're going to talk more about all of those, but do we know why this is becoming such an epidemic, why there's so much diabetes going on?
Well, I think one thing we have more and more people who, for whatever in their lives, they don't cook at home, and they just eat out, and so we have a lot of people eating out, high calorie, very high processed foods with low nutrients in them. We have people wanting to sit all the time at their computers instead of getting out and walking and exercising, and the environmental toxicities. Those are, that's a question I ask every single patient walking in the door. Do you use a typical exterminator? And most people, of course, say yes, and the next question is, are they actually spraying not just outside, but in your home? And there are people who, allow exterminators to spray these chemicals in their home, let alone, just plastic water bottles and cooking and storing and fragrances, all these ways that chemicals are we're being exposed to, and they're causing problems. So, there's just some laziness, I guess, and lack of exercising, sedentary lifestyle, the diet, getting away from home-cooked meals, with organic food, and, the environmental problems. So it's definitely an epidemic, not just in North America, but around the world.
Well, I agree with you. Last week we actually did a show on Monsanto, and we were talking about, how this is the Roundup is sprayed on all our foods and the problems that's causing. And I've done several shows on the chemicals in our homes, the thousands of unregulated chemicals that we're dealing with every day. And women put over 100 on their bodies just getting ready in the morning. And we don't understand the repercussions, and I think we're starting to see some of that in illnesses like this and the other chronic illnesses that are cropping up that weren't there, a few decades ago, that we weren't dealing with at all.
Well, I agree, and I also that's so great that you're doing those shows, and it relates totally to diabetes, even with certain things like GMOs, or all the when we look at the gut health has a lot to do with insulin resistance systemically, and also autoimmunity. They did studies showing that they were able to see leaky gut in kids who had autoimmune antibodies to diabetes, but were not yet clinically showing the disease. They already saw that their guts had intestinal permeability. We also know that the gut can make a lot of inflammatory endotoxins that can go systemically and make insulin resistance. So, many of these foods that we eat with chemicals, aside from themselves, just the damage to the gut, the antibiotics, the NSAIDs, the ibuprofens, the things that people take, and it also can be so harmful to the gastrointestinal tract. And that can lead to both autoimmune disease and insulin resistance type 2.
Well, not only that, but how much gut health is ignored in mainstream medicine. I mean, anybody who's in the side that you and I are in, we know we start with gut health and we work on diet and we take probiotics and we do all those things. But when you just are going to your conventional doctor, they say, your diet's not that big of a deal, and they don't even talk about probiotics, and maybe they'll give you some antibiotics to see if that will help whatever is going on. And then we've got this cascade of inflammation and symptoms continuing down that road.
And don't forget PPIs, proton pump inhibitors, handed out like candy that people are on for years. Just really, you're right. The main diet advocated by both the American Diabetes Association and the Canadian Diabetes Association is not a diet that's going to help people with diabetes. It's just, it just spins your head around,
Yeah, I definitely agree. We're going to talk more about it after this break. We're talking today with Dr. Mona Morstein, and we're discussing her book, Master Your Diabetes, and we'll be back shortly.
Your life, your health, your network. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
The largest syndicated alternative health talk program has come to the Voice America Network. The Dr. Bob Martin Show is the program that will answer your health questions and help you to heal your own body of many different ailments. Each week, you'll hear the answers that Dr. Bob gives to his callers that help them to be their own doctor most of the time. We'll also discuss developments on the healthcare front and what you need to do to keep your body in top form. The Dr. Bob Martin Show airs Wednesday mornings at 9 a.m. Eastern, 6 a.m. Pacific on Voice America Health and Wellness.
The Voice America Live Events channel is here now to showcase your corporate, individual, or organization's live event. Visit voiceamerica.com/live events to see all of our past live events and find out more. Whether it's a multi-day conference, special speaker, or single-day event, we've got everything to make your event a success. We can do a few hours or a few days. For more information about taking your event to the next level, call Jeff Spinard at 480-294-6417 or email info@voiceamerica.com. Again, that's Jeff Spinard at 480-294-6417 or send us an email to info@voiceamerica.com. Voice America is where you are and where you want to be. Join us around the globe as we broadcast live from some of the most interesting events available. Don't forget to view all our live events, including on-demand access to past events that you may have missed by visiting voiceamerica.com/live events.
Your life, your health, your network. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Falling Through the Cracks with your host, Dr. Rebecca Risk. To reach the program today, please call in to 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email directly to Dr. Risk. The email address is anantacalgary@gmail.com. Now, back to Falling Through the Cracks. Feel alive and thrive.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Today we're talking with Dr. Mona Morstein. She is the author of Master Your Diabetes, a comprehensive integrative approach for both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. So, Mona, one thing, we're talking about the risk factors for diabetes, and one of the main things that we all know is diet, and you did touch on that. What changes can people make if they think that they're going in that direction? I mean, you don't have to have diabetes or pre-diabetic. I know I have a high risk for diabetes because it is in my family, so I take precautions. So what changes can people make so that they can make, what changes can people make?
Well, I think the first thing, the core basic foundational change in a patient with diabetes is going to a low-carb diet. There was an interesting article written by Dr. Richard Feynman, including Dr. Bernstein and 25, other PhD, MDs, very highly renowned throughout the world, on dietary carbohydrate restriction as the first approach in diabetes management. And this was printed in Nutrition Magazine. There are really hundreds of other studies showing the benefits of low carb. And the reason we need to do low carb is that really a one-sentence definition of diabetes is that the patient has lost the metabolic capacity to process carbohydrates by having either insulin resistance or low or no insulin production. And so if you can't process something, honestly, it just needs to be restricted. And the low-carb diet is the first and most foundational change and effective benefit that a person can do for their diabetes. I mean, literally, blood pressure blood glucose, can drop 100 points in a week. Going from just eating a regular diet or having oatmeal for breakfast or something, into eating low carb. And not only that, another benefits to the low carb is not just making it so much easier to get blood sugars under control, but by doing that, the insulin resistance decreases so substantially that appetite control is reinvigorated, because appetite is based on chemicals and hormones, and when you're insulin resistant in your brain cells, we don't really get the signals that, I'm full, I'm done, that's enough food. And when we go low carb, again, even within this week, my patients come back saying, you know what, this diet isn't so bad. I'm not that hungry, just eating this much is fine. Because not only when their glucose comes down, their insulin resistance comes down, their appetite gets under control, and then of course they start losing weight. So it's just so win-win. And then with the low carb though, we like, this whole foods, organic, low carb diet. So there's a lot of energy about teaching the quality of the food eaten. And another thing to really be focused on is that when a physician says, you can't have any bread or rice or rolls or oatmeal or popcorn, or, the patient's world in their head starts shrinking and getting very narrow. And so it's very important for the physician to have handouts and alternative things for them to eat, like teaching them to make breads and rolls and the muffins with nut flours or coconut flours, and teaching them that, or even cauliflower. I've got a good cauliflower bread recipe. So it's removing one thing, but then focusing on everything else they can eat under this diet that can mimic their old diet and bring enjoyment to them. And by adding all of these new, exciting, tasty foods into their diet, which fit a low-carb diet idea, this is how we can educate and bring success and joy to this diet change, which is generally a pretty substantial change for most patients.
So I just want to confirm what you mean by low carb. I mean, there's a lot of talk about this, but what foods are people going to be eliminating when they're doing this?
Well, low carb, generally, most of us are saying that the definition of low carb is generally at least under 50 grams, down to 30 grams, even down to 5 or 10 grams for some people, depending on which low carb diet they choose. Low carb, in general, as I said, the main group to remove is the grains. So this is, if it's made by a grain, if it's a pancake or a tortilla, or if it's rice or bread or crackers or pasta or oatmeal, all of those have to go. Potatoes have to go, right? These are beans. Most beans have to go. And so the other foods that they can have are all the low-carb grain alternatives, proteins, such as meat and poultry, nuts and seeds, organic soy, eggs and fish and dairy and protein powders, all vegetables. Generally with fruit, we're very, if they want to have, of course, avocados or cucumbers or olives, which are considered in the fruit family, that's fine. Some tomatoes are fine. But in terms of actual fruits, there are some patients who can have like a little berries at lunch, but we have to watch that can raise the blood sugar for others. There are some artificial sweeteners that are healthy. Fats, of course, people can eat a lot of fat and fatty foods because fats never turn into really glucose in general eating. So those are kind of what we're looking at as rough, dietary beverages. There's a lot of beverages, from water and teas and herbal teas and unsweetened alternative milks, and some veggie juices can be okay. Fizzy water, coffee, alternative coffee. There are some healthy soda pops like Zevias, a little alcohol, unless a person has a fatty liver. But otherwise, alcohol, many people think alcohol turns into blood sugar, but it doesn't. So a glass of wine or a shot of whiskey, if anything, can lower the blood sugar. So, these are the kind of, it's a whole foods, healthy diet, where foods that break down to carbohydrates the most, those are removed.
So I know when someone's first diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, how does what you're recommending differ from what their doctor is recommending?
Well, first of all, most of my patients don't get any dietary advice. They come in on medications, and when their blood sugars aren't, well controlled, they get more medications. If they get a chance, I've had patients who asked their physician to set them up with a nutritionist, and they still never got referred to one. But if they are, it depends. Is the registered dietitian in the box or out of the box? If they're in the box, they follow the American Diabetes Association diet. Now, even though in their 2013 guidelines they discussed a low-carb diet, on their basic website, they're still wanting people to eat a high-carb meal, or high-carb meals and snacks. And so if they go to a registered dietitian that is following what the head organization of diabetes is recommending, they're going to be eating, how many patients they'll come in and they'll eat oatmeal for breakfast because it's whole grains, low fat, still working off of this old archaic paradigm that fats are bad for people with diabetes. And so this is a problem. It's a very big problem. We have to kind of undo, if they've had any education, oftentimes we have to undo it. But most patients are not getting very much, are not getting much nutritional guidance at all.
That I would say that I'm shocked, but I know that this is what happens, and overall I find it pretty sad, because it is the diet that is leading people with type 2 diabetes to that point where they are, and obviously they need help with changes, because that is something they probably don't even understand how to change. I mean, maybe they'll eliminate sugar if they have that inclination, but that doesn't mean that they're going to do the rest of what you said. You know, even the fruit and a lot of the carbs, and looking at adding in the nutrients that they've been missing.
That's exactly correct, right? So, they'll come in and, they really want, our people nowadays, they want to take control of their health. They don't really want to be on many medications, or if any, and yet it's very frustrating. We've got these very short office visits of 8 to 10 minutes. People basically get their A1C measured, and their endocrinologist says, oh, it's, 8. You're doing fine. See you in 3 months, where 8 is an inordinately high A1C, well into the range of, cause diabetic complications. But, their 10 minutes is up, and it's not like I'm trying to be cynical. There's a lot of good about conventional conventional medicine. They do a lot of good, but in this chronic disease setting, I think we have the right to offer some criticisms about how the service is set up in the care.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you now, especially when we're talking about some of the other things that you talked about, like if we go back to the topic about chemicals. I mean, that's never talked about.
No.
That this could be an issue, and even when you're saying the World Health Organization is recognizing that some of it is contributing to the diabetes and the multiple other health problems that we're having from them. Can you just tell us how somebody can recognize, I mean, it might be difficult for them to recognize this is causing a problem, but how they can make those changes in their home so they're not exposed?
Yes, absolutely. Just some basic steps. One, never have anything with fragrance. Not your trash bags, not little plug-in fragrances, not your dryer sheets. Fragrances, those chemicals are some of the worst chemicals that are out there. Most communities nowadays do have, organic exterminators. Like the one for my house, he uses peppermint oil. Now, make sure that your exterminator doesn't say, oh, no, our chemical is from chrysanthemums. Yeah, they take chrysanthemums and turn them into pyrethrins, very toxic chemicals. So there's a lot of misdirection. You want a truly green exterminator. You also want to make sure that we're getting rid of the plastics, right? So we're certainly not cooking with plastics like in a microwave. Ideally, storing your foods in glass containers, getting non-plastic water bottles, just trying to clean the plastics which leach these estrogenic, simulator chemicals into our foods. We want to, those are simple things to do. If you're going to refurbish your home, no VOC paint. Don't get carpeting and carpet glue, or get it organic. Just try to get your house clean and green as well. The cleaning supplies. Try to clean out the chemicals. Your toiletries, try to get them organic, or from, very green type of chemical companies, or I should say cosmetic companies. Just these simple little steps can start having some pretty overall effects. The other thing is, there's a great study showing, this is what, I'm a huge advocate of perspiration, of sweating. sweating when you exercise, and even in saunas. Ideally, whether you have a sauna at your gym or you get a home sauna. But we know scientifically that we can sweat out environmental chemicals and heavy metals. It'll come through the sweat. And yet so often nowadays people almost shy away from sweating or getting sweaty, or, they'll want to work out where it's cool so they don't sweat or something like that. But we need, if not daily, and many days of the week, to be getting a good sweat that, if you work out, wear enough clothes so you're always sweating. You're drenching your top. And then otherwise, if you go to the gym or hop in the sauna for 20 minutes, as long as your physician doesn't think there's any reason that it's unsafe for you. But this is one of our first ways to detox, is to just regularly be, making ourselves sweat.
Well, I did a show on the book Tox In, Tox Out, and we talked about toxins, and they did a self-study on saunas, and they found that was actually one of the most effective ways to get the everyday toxins we're exposed to out of our bodies.
That's what I'm saying. It's true.
Yeah, it's very easy these days to get a personal one at home. You don't have to build a room anymore. So, it's definitely a good recommendation for anybody, and very accessible.
Yeah, it really is. And there's few things, more beneficial to your life nowadays in this toxic world than a good perspiration.
So we're going to take a quick break. We're talking to Dr. Mona Morstein about her book, Master Your Diabetes, and we'll be back shortly.
Opinions, options, answers. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
Take us on the go. It's even easier now. The Voice America Talk Radio Network has launched our mobile app for iPhone, Android, or BlackBerry. Visit the Apple iTunes App Store, BlackBerry App World, or Android Market to download the app powered by Aircast. It's free and no registration is necessary. In minutes, you could be enjoying your favorite Voice America Talk Radio host, no matter where you are, in the car, out and about, while traveling, or anytime you can't be close to your computer. Catch up on the archives you've missed or discover new shows on the spot. Search Voice America at your favorite app store.
What causes us to be sick? We're not talking about the actual illness or the scientific cause of illnesses. We're talking about your body and health. Listen for the healing whisper of return to peace. Each week, host Dr. Marianne Chase shows you how to listen to your heart to identify poor health, stress, and disease. You'll learn how to heal energetically and spiritually as well as physically. It's time to depend less on the drugs and more on the heart. The Healing Whisper airs live every Friday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, 8 a.m. Pacific on Voice America Health and Wellness.
Follow the Voice America Talk Radio Network on Twitter. We're at Voice America TRN. You'll get the latest fix on what's happening with our shows, this week's featured guests, and general happenings that you should know about at the Voice America Talk Radio Network. Now you don't have to miss anything when you're away from your home or office. Just go to twitter.com/Voice America TRN or follow along with us at Voice America TRN, the Voice America Talk Radio Network. We're on the cutting edge of social media. Can you keep up?
Opinions, options, answers. You're listening to Voice America Health and Wellness.
You are listening to Falling Through the Cracks with your host, Dr. Rebecca Risk. To reach the program today, please call in to 1-866-472-5792. Again, that's 1-866-472-5792. You may also send an email directly to Dr. Risk. The email address is anantacalgary@gmail.com. Now, back to Falling Through the Cracks. Feel alive and thrive.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Today we're talking with Dr. Mona Morstein about her book, Master Your Diabetes. So one thing I want to discuss is how people can get diagnosed with diabetes. We didn't get to that in the beginning, and I think that's important so people know just what to look out for as well.
Well, getting diagnosed with diabetes relies generally on two main measurements. One is blood sugar, both fasting and after eating, and also then what we call the A1C, which monitors where a person's blood sugar has been on average over the last 3 months. Generally, on labs, over from 100 to 125 fasting glucose, and just divide that by 18, I guess, for Canadian, but that's the diagnosis for prediabetes, and 126 and above is for diabetes. The problem is that the fasting glucose really should be around 80 to 85. By the time someone is in the 90s, if someone comes to me and their glucose is 97, I'm not going to say, well, that's fine because it's not 100, right? We can already catch it earlier and start making changes before we get it any worse, right? So you start getting into the 90s, the upper 90s, this is your early warning sign before you actually become pre-diabetic. With the A1C, pre-diabetes is from 5.7 to 6.4, and diabetes is at 6.5 or above. The problem is the studies show that an A1C over 5.5 is already causing damage to the body. So, by 5.6, even though you're not even diabetic by nature, you're having damage to the body. By 5.7 to 6.4, the physician may be saying, well, you're doing okay, you're not a diabetic, but you're having damage to your body, which is why when diabetic patients finally get diagnosed with diabetes, oftentimes already they have some nerve disease developing or have some other problems developing, complications, because of this lower non-diabetic level has already been damaging their body. So I think physicians who practice naturopathic or integrative care, we have to be a lot more aggressive in working with patients who are having the earliest signs possible and working with them through diet and supplementation and the environment and the gut and all these other ways to really start preventing things from spinning out of control even before people get any formal diagnoses. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it definitely does. I mean, why would you want to cross that line into having diabetes if you can prevent it? Which is where I am in my life, knowing that it's in my family. I take a lot of precautions to make sure I don't even go down that road.
Yeah, that's very smart. That is really very smart. I had every now and then you get some lean diet type 2s who there's type 2 and all throughout their family, and then they just get into drinking a lot of soda pop or energy drinks full of sugar, and bam, they just become a diabetic, even though they're not necessarily very overweight, but because it was so in their family that just drinking those drinks, set them off, right? So when you have a high risk factor in your family, being wise and engaging common sense is definitely the best methodology.
Well, I definitely agree, and I hope that this show can bring that awareness to people. If they're diabetic, if it can help them, but if they're pre-diabetic or just want to avoid where over 50% of the population has already headed, that we can make those changes beforehand so that we can change those statistics.
Yes, exactly. I agree with you so strongly.
So is there, when you give this advice to people, do you get a lot of people in their head thinking that this is going to be too difficult for them? And how do you help them get over that thought process?
Well, I do that, one, by having a lot of really helpful handouts. So it's not, I just don't look at someone in the eye and say, don't eat, grains and eat some nut flours. But my basic diet handout is like 8 pages long, where we go over every category of food. I have a second page of resources, books and websites with really cool recipes, and, so that they've got in their hand usable information, kind of step by step of how to make changes, right? So when people have the explanation and then have the data that they need to make the changes, it really seems like it's a lot easier to embrace than if you're just sitting at your desk and writing down low carb, on a piece of paper and giving it to them. So we do, my first office visit with a patient's an hour and a half, and, the second visit can be up to 2 hours doing all of the treatment. So it's not an 8-minute visit, right? And this is how we get people really becoming successful in taking ownership of their diabetes protocol.
Well, I think that's an important word is taking ownership, because I know a lot of time people, not just with diabetes, but with other illnesses, are going to their doctor and blindly taking medications and hoping for that quick fix that we think exists, but actually doesn't exist anywhere. And we're just hoping that's going to happen for us.
It's true. At this point, people have to, they do have to take ownership. And when they do, as we write, you can have victory over diabetes. It doesn't have to wear you down and give you, shorten your life and give you complications. You can become the master over it and live as long as, live your healthy, normal lifespan just by making these changes that now you need to follow. And the other thing is, even in the first week, certainly by the second week, patients feel so much better. Their energy is better. Their head is clearer. Their appetite's better. They just start feeling better, and that, of course, is the feedback that they need to see and that I know will solidify the value of the treatment, into their lives.
Well, I definitely agree, and I know another part of your treatment, aside from the diet, is some supplements. So what changes can people make there to help themselves?
Yeah, I think, the thing to remember about supplements is that everybody, wants that magic bullet, the idea being, I don't have to change anything, I'll just take some alpha-lipoic acid. Well, no, supplements are not drugs. So they work, that's what we call them, supplements. They supplement the key aspects of a protocol in this regard, say diet and exercise and the healing the gut and environmental detoxification and making sure there's no sleep apnea and treating, all of these key aspects will be synergistically benefited, by some extra supplements. Supplements can obviously replenish nutrient deficiencies, and we know nutrient deficiencies exist in people with diabetes, help with the mood, they can help low lipid levels, they can help lower blood pressure, they can help regulate glucose, they can help, they're antioxidants, they're anti-inflammatories, and oxidative damage is based on oxidative stress and inflammatory chemicals. So these supplements do so much for people with diabetes. And I think everybody should be on a very good multiple vitamin, which is almost never a one a day. Your integrative physician, I'm sure, has a very good, maybe you need to take 6 a day, but now you're going to be really repleting all of the vitamins and minerals. I think people with diabetes should be on fish oils to get in those omega-3 oils. I think they should take alpha-lipoic acid, curcumin. I think they should take some Gymnema sylvester, which is called the sugar destroyer in India, and is one of our best herbs for decreasing cravings for carbohydrates. Alpha-lipoic acid is a great antioxidant and also helps reduce insulin resistance. Same with turmeric, curcumin, great antioxidant, anti-inflammatory, and reduces insulin resistance. A little bilberry for the eyes. For sometimes we're just kind of giving some ideas of protection just for certain areas of the body. Also, I think, green tea extract is good. A little extra vanadium and chromium and zinc, some of the 3 key minerals for blood sugar regulation. Benfotiamine is an amazing fat-soluble thiamine that's been shown to help reverse complications and both in the kidneys, in the eyes, in the nerves. That's a very good thing to take. So if they're asking me to, pick and choose, various supplements, I would be, some people do chromium, I guess. That's fine, but I think the other ones are a little bit more what I'm thinking about. Oh, I left one out, berberine. Berberine is amazing and has been shown to be equal to metformin in helping to reduce insulin resistance and help regulate glucose numbers in type 2 diabetics. These are the main ones off the top of my head that I do think all people type 1 or type 2 should be on with diabetes.
Well, I think that's a really good starting point, and anybody who is affected, I think they should pick up your book. And if you can let us know if there's any other way people can get a hold of you to get more information.
Yeah. Again, my book is you can get it on Amazon. Just Mona Morstein and Master Your Diabetes. If you just put that in, it's fine. There's the comprehensive integrative approach for type 1 and type 2 diabetes. My website is azimsolutions.com, azimsolutions.com. My phone is 480-284-8155. I'm in Tempe, Arizona. Thank you, Rebecca, for this wonderful interview.
Well, thank you so much for sharing with us. I think this was a really good show, and anybody who wants more information, I recommend that you do pick up this book. It has, as she said, 500 or so pages of information, which you're not going to find a lot of this anywhere else. So please pick up the book. It's called Master Your Diabetes, a comprehensive integrative approach for both type 1 and type 2 diabetes. Yeah, thank you so much for joining me, and I want to thank everybody for listening today. Be sure to make today a great day.
Thank you for tuning in to this week's edition of Falling Through the Cracks. Feel alive and thrive. Please join Dr. Rebecca Risk again next Monday at noon Eastern Time and 9 a.m. Pacific Time on the Voice America Health and Wellness channel. We'll talk more next week.
Thanks again for listening to the preceding program, brought to you on the Voice America Health and Wellness Channel. For more information about our network and to check out additional show hosts and topics of interest, please visit voiceamericahealth.com. The Voice America Talk Radio Network is the worldwide leader in live Internet talk radio. Visit voiceamerica.com. The views and ideas expressed on the preceding program are strictly those of the host or guests and do not necessarily reflect